Brian, man, thanks so much for joining me. Really, this is kind of an intro because we haven't done this specifically, on the big dog side of things yet. But I wanted to bring you on and just let people have a touch point of the type of coach that you really are, because I think that you've got some really unique things to offer to people in the online fitness coaching market. And so, could you just do us a favor and just give yourself a quick introduction and how you even got to where you're sitting?
Yeah. So first off, my name's Brian Foley, coach here at Big Dogs. I've been on the online coaching sphere since about 2014. Initially, the catalyst of that was hiring James Fitzgerald as my personal coach of, individual design. And that was the first time I've ever heard of that. That relationship grew bigger than just being a coach and client. I embodied pretty much everything he was preaching at that time. And it led me out to OPEX in about 2014. At that time, online coaching was starting to poke its head out into the world. Still email chains, right? No True Coach, no platforms, nothing out there. So it was very exciting to be able to just be like, wait, I can send an email to someone and they can do the training and give me feedback. So, fast forward to like now 2019, and this has escalated very quickly. Now we have platforms, technology, and we have communication lines, face-to-face communication. There's, so many more assets we have in online coaching. And I think, today I sit in a good position of where I'm coaching athletes and as well as coaches. And specifically in the sphere, athletes geared towards competitive fitness, and then coaches either maybe coaching other individuals in that community or were athletes in the past, quote unquote, competitive athletes.
Right.
And then kind of transitioning themselves and realizing that they were just as passionate about helping others as they were in fitness as they were for themselves. So broad spectrum of people I work with, but mostly every one of my clients is eager to learn. And I think that's the coolest thing. And if there was to put a common theme of all clients, they're intrigued, they want knowledge, and they genuinely just want to get freaking better. And at the end of the day, the outcomes of those clients, whatever their goals were, they're fulfilled. And so, I'll stop there for the intro.
No, you took me to a whole nother planet when you reminded me, because you and I came in at a fairly similar time.
Yeah.
And we were doing, Google Sheets or Excel or Gmail. And remember, there was maybe a half a dozen people who approached us. It's like, we got the platform for this thing called online fitness coaching. And we tried a couple different platforms. And we're like, dude, you don't have the platform for online fitness coaching. And then, Casey and Robbie came in with True Coach. We're like, these guys have the answer for it.
Yeah.
But gosh, that was so funny. It's so funny to think about and how much has changed as the technology's improved. I know you're a technology guy. We'll get to that in a minute. But when you think about coaching a client, just give me a broad stroke thought of how you would approach helping somebody get better in fitness. How do you actually do that?
I think the most efficient way that I do this and personally is genuinely getting to know the person. And what I mean by that is sifting through an intake form in paper, sifting through what they may be projecting out there when you meet someone new, and try to peel back onion layers to their soul, essentially, right? As quick as possible. So I think that's something that I love doing, and something I'm good at is creating environment for individuals just to open up and create that space. And as soon as you get to know someone, and this is their habits, right? What are they doing outside of the goals they've signed up with you to try to achieve? What did they do in the past? What are they looking forward to? What do they do for a career? And then you build this kind of like really essentially the Frankenstein model of this client immediately. And I just try to find here, I go, well, if all this disappeared, if their goals disappeared today, and we were trying to start from scratch, where would we try to go with this? And it gets my gears turning on people. And I think eventually I'm able to find these little crevices in people and find truth. And really it's just gearing them towards something they can align to, right? They got to ignite the life force. And I guess I'll wrap it up with saying that it's the life force, and you can feel that in people. I personally can. So when you have someone completely aligned and you see this direction and you get to know them, you're like, wow, this is it. Competitive athlete of mine, Rock. I talked about this guy a lot, but he's someone who, a client I've worked with for now, we're on year 2, and someone who's strictly just competitive, right? We're just going to use him as an example. And he's embodying it. Like, it's him, it's his purpose. And it's awesome, you know. And I was there, I've been there, you know. I never got to the level. I think maybe we all feel like this if we're not currently at the top of the game still competing. It's like, man, I never got to the level I wanted to, but maybe we all got to the level we were supposed to get to, right?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh
And
man.
you know, and just real quick on that with Rock, you know, and he's embodied it, and I haven't had to do anything but just guide him with the training, right? But I know him, I know what's going on, I know how he ticks, and we've been able to just set sail on autopilot, right? And I think you can find that in every client, given that you're comfortable with, you know, having conversations about like, hey, your goals are bullshit, right? Or, you know, like, why are you really doing this? Or, hey, it looks like this is more of a priority. Are you sure you're not telling yourself a lie, right? Or is the ego kind of coming up front, and is there something masking what you're really after? Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. You may lose a client sometimes when you do that.
Right.
I think that's okay, because it gives them in a perspective, and they may not be ready, right, to be coached, because now they're like, oh my gosh, I'm a whole new being, right? I'm a whole new person, and my world shattered. So anyways, yeah. So
I think that's so interesting, where I'm a big believer, obviously, in making sure that you have a product or a service that the market wants and needs. But the service that a client in fitness wants is to improve and to enjoy the process of improving. And so I think that you hit such a good nail on the head, where your job is to give them that moment to say, do I want to go right or left? You know, and if it's like, hey, I want to go left, it's like, c'est la vie, you know, good luck. If that's what your purpose really is, then, you know, you can sleep well at night because you help them get closer to the end vision. And I think that that's something that we forget about, not just in coaching, right, but anything in business. But
right.
let me kind of stay on the topic a little bit about fitness athletes, you know, competitors. From a timely standpoint, CrossFit just announced that they're going to cut a substantial number of competitors after the first event. I give no more clarity to this question other than asking you, what do you think about that?
I mean, if you've been in this game long enough, right? Let's talk about, it's not really a surprise. Something came out from headquarters last minute, or change of direction this year. But man, for the athletes there, I think it's just whoever put in the most training, you know, it's like your training is going to show up, not you. I think on that type of circumstance. And what I mean by that is, like, how well-rounded are you going into that? You and I touched briefly on this on a conversation of, it could be a 1 hour swim, or you could be doing a 1 RM snatch, right? And, you know, if day one, both those come out and those are not in your wheelhouse, I mean, better day one than day 5 when you think you're going to win, right? So, you know, in that situation, I think for those who, well, it's the whole field. It's not for those who are worried. I think the whole field should have some type of nerves here to go, well, it's a hopper situation. Whatever comes out, comes out. I got to put my best foot forward. What's your best foot forward? You're training invested into the event.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you're coaching one of those athletes walking onto the field or into the stadium that day, what are you doing with them from today until they walk into the stadium, so that they're the best prepared to be at 100% for that type of a stressful environment? Because let's face it, right? Like, that's probably more stress than a lot of these athletes thought they were going to have showing up in Madison. So what would you help them do between now and the time they step foot on the field?
You know, I would solely take their focus and put it into what experiences they want to have being out there on the field. And if you're going to lie, let's say lie, but let's say this, you're not going to attend to the elephant in the room that your athlete could get knocked out in week 1 or day 1, right? That you're doing a disservice, because you're going to build up fake hope for this situation, right? That may hit them, blindside them, and they are not prepared for that. And so what I mean by experiences is that it's like, well, let's change this event. What if you only have one day and you only have 3 events, right? So what are we going to do on one day and 3 events? I'd rather you go out there and live in those moments and find your victories, whether that's beating out Matt Frazier, right, in an event once. Those are those sparks that are going to keep you going year after year. And, yeah, and I think that's the most important thing. You got to walk away with victories going in there, because, if you go into a whole year of training for the fucking games and you walk away with a sour attitude or piss, and I know it's tough, right? Because I get it. There's one more we can dive into, but man, there's got to be fulfillment in there, right? And so I think what I would do is just beat it in their head about, you got to get out there, live to your fullest, right? Be vulnerable, go 110%. Let's figure out what you can do out there. You earn that, you at least earn the stage, go live on it. Don't go be on eggshells on it because you're stressed about what day 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So, yeah.
So if you were, let's kind of fast forward into, okay, now you've heard what the event is. Let's go quickly 2 scenarios. Let's go scenario number 1. It should be a home run for your athlete. Okay. How does the conversation either continue or change at that moment?
Well, I will put that out there, say this should be in your wheelhouse, right? If we both communicated this, we're on the same page. So there should be confidence behind what you're doing in that event. But anything can happen, right? So specifically in there, given whatever that event is, I would go back to data. And I go back to data. I've been like, what have you proven to me and yourself? It's like, well, you've done this in this scenario, you've done this in this scenario, and X, Y, Z, and we've prepped you. So there should be no issues for you, at least to be here. And I think that's the beacon, right? So like, I think for me in my head, that whole example was a snatch. I don't know why, but it was a 1RM snatch. And, like, let's just say that number for a male is that 265 bar. And it's like, look, man, you've hit this every time in these scenarios. And this is day 1, you're fresh. Like, we've peaked you, you're ready to go. So hit 265 and that's it. And when they can solely focus on that and like immerse themselves into those events, it's easy to accomplish those tasks when we've talked about it. It's like, oh my gosh, that's 4 times. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? It's like, there's always a little bit of room for extra success, right? You know what I mean? But if you've snatched 265 and you have attempted 265 100 times, this is not somebody who's brand new in fitness who's going to hit a 30-pound PR out of nowhere, right? Maybe you got 5 or 10, and it's like in that 1 in a million situation, maybe you got 15. But there's got to be some layer of foundational truth to where they are, and then sort of that inspiring. And when you hit 265 and you come back for the next one, let's see how 265 felt, and then really go for where you need to be. I just think that there's so much truth to that, where people, even at high levels, some folks forget about reality. But also you got to inspire them to be willing and confident and fired up to go hit 265 like a boss. And then be willing to go after 270, 275 with the same amount of confidence. And I think that's so interesting. So let me flip the stage here. It's an event that they're afraid of, or that they should be pretty bad at. How does the conversation shift there?
So that would be game plan on my head. What I would do is figure out what that situation was going to potentially look like for my athlete, right? I'm going to go in there and go, okay, look, let's just say they're going to get dead last. I'm like, oh man, it's like, let's say they can't swim and they're out going to go swim, something like that. It's like, oh gosh, well, that's bad. That's very drastic. We'll say they get an attempt at what this event is, but from there, I would create a specific one event challenge, maybe a leaderboard objective for themselves, something to put out there for them to latch onto. And it's got to be something that, even though they're not confident in this, right, they got to be confident in what I have them latch onto, right? So that's a very dynamic variable, I guess, when you're dealing with each person, because you got to find out what makes them that gamer in those situations, right? And it takes a lot of training with a certain athlete to know what those markers are. But yeah, I think just setting the objective of like, look, we know this is going to go bad. Let's not get last. It could be as simple as that. If you do not get last, we win this event. And it's just one, right? It's just the one. And we have all this other beautiful stuff that you're really good at that we can accomplish. And I think, just given how bad it's going to be, it's kind of really, you're just trying to put out a fire for the time being. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to look beautiful out on stage. It's going to look ugly, but it may be some huge breakthrough for that athlete in that moment, right? Where it's like, I thought I was going to get last, right? But I got second to last. So someone's worse than me. And that just makes them to event too. And I've been there where, you're at the bottom of the barrel, but you're like, or you just don't achieve what you want to, but at least it gives you some motivation if you're not the very last person.
Well, I think that gives such a good insight into really your mind on this thing, which I think is such a good one, is you're looking at the big picture. And of course, you want your athlete to perform at their best and win every competition. But you're also thinking about, okay, if I get a workout, let's say, snatch. Let's say that I were to somehow have made the games. I have a terrible, snatch, okay? It's like, I know I'm going to get last. And no matter how much I do between now and 3 weeks from now, I'm getting last in that. Right. But there is such a great opportunity for that athlete to go do something that is great for them. And I think that a lot of athletes forget about that, right? It's, if you're going there and you're not an athlete who's either won before or been right on that top stage, it's like, let's be realistic with 200 athletes. The workouts would really have to come into your wheelhouse for 4 or 5 days to really, be in the mix on this thing. So there's so much that can be learned over that 4 or 5 day period. Or by the way, that one lift. Right. And so I think that that's really important. And then, of course, you've got the athletes who are in that middle zone. It's like, oh, man, I got to do a couple percentage points better than I've ever done before. But they still need to know what that pace looks like to give themselves a shot.
Right.
And so they still have to be based in some level of reality. And then they gotta do just a bit more than they've ever done before, and that can be helped over the next couple of weeks. So I appreciate your perspectives on that, Brian. Man, I could sit here talking to you all day, man. We got to keep these segments really short, but I appreciate you introing yourself and giving us some great thoughts on what you define as a great kind of coaching relationship, and then kind of what you're thinking about on the games. But we'll do this more, man. So I appreciate it.
Cool. No, it was fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.